Hello, it's Lucy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be talking about how I got 4 software engineering internship offers as a freshman in college. I'll be walking you through my entire journey step by step on how I secured those offers and giving you tips and tricks so that you can do the same. This is going to be a multi-part series in which I talk about how I got internship offers as a freshman, sophomore, junior, and beyond, so make sure you stay tuned, especially because I'll be giving different tips and tricks along the way based on where I was at in my college journey and my career journey. So let's get started. I started my freshman year of college at Cornell University as a global and public health sciences major on the pre-med track. Now you're probably thinking this has nothing to do with computer science or tech, and that is correct. I took my first ever CS class as a freshman in college during my first semester, and I absolutely loved it. And it really made me question all of my life decisions. Do I still want to do medicine? Do I want to switch to computer science? Am I even good enough to switch to computer science? So, needless to say, I had some sort of life crisis, but I won't bore you with the details. But essentially, after a lot of research and thinking and reflecting, I decided that I wanted to pursue computer science and try to get some type of internship in technology. I'm telling you all of this because I think there's a misconception that you need to be some type of computer science god to be able to get a software engineering internship, and that is just not true. I got 4 internship offers after having only been coding for 3 months, having only taken really 1 coding class, and only had just started my second coding class. So I just want to make everyone realize that it is possible to get an internship without having much experience at all, and I really want to encourage all of you to not let anything stop you as you pursue a career in software engineering. So first, I'll talk about the classes I took that helped me secure these internship offers. So like I mentioned before, I took my first CS class at Cornell, and it was CS 1110. This is Cornell's introductory course to computer science. It just basically teaches you all the coding fundamentals, like what is an int, float, string, array, if statements, for loops. So this really just secured my foundation in computer science. And then my second semester at Cornell, I took CS 2110, which is data structures and algorithms. And this really taught me like all the other data structures that I didn't know before, like linked lists, heaps, hash maps, like all different things. And then it also taught me object-oriented programming and a lot of things like recursion, polymorphism. Like just think your typical data structures and algorithms class. And you are early on in your computer science degree, or even if you're not a computer science major, I think it is like I highly recommend taking a data structures and algorithms course if you're looking to go into any field related to software engineering, because it really lays down those fundamentals for you to be able to solve those coding challenges that a lot of tech companies ask for. The next thing that I'll be talking about are the skills and languages that I learned during my freshman year. So like I mentioned before, I took 2 courses at Cornell University, and the first one was taught in Python and the second one was taught in Java. And these are all both very like industry standard languages. They're very widely used. So I think that really helped put on my resume. I also was teaching myself web development on the side as I was a full-time student. So I taught myself HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I also taught myself how to use Git on the command line and how to use GitHub. And I think all of these skills were extremely useful to put on my resume, but also to learn and grow as an aspiring software engineer and computer scientist in general. I think that like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are very widely used in industry as well. And they're pretty approachable. I would say that they're definitely more approachable than maybe like C or C++. So if you're looking to add some more skills to your resume, those would be great options. For me, I learned through YouTube, LinkedIn Learning, and just online documentation. So I think those are all great starts to learning new skills and languages. The next thing that I will be talking about is personal projects. I think if you're trying to enter the software engineering industry, personal projects are super important, especially if you have no prior experience in software engineering. So what do I mean by personal projects? A personal project could be literally anything that requires some type of coding. So for me, I created a calculator using Python. And while this may seem very basic, it was a huge accomplishment for me at the time because I had never created a project from start to finish on my own without any starter code from class or something like that. So it really gave me the confidence that I was able to do this. And then another project I created was a tic-tac-toe game, also in Python, and I called it an AI game, but really it was just a bunch of if statements that if the player makes this move, then the computer makes this move. So it was not AI or machine learning in the sense that most people think, but I think it still really taught me a lot by creating that project on my own. I also used a class project that I did in class and made it my own. So I got rid of all of the starter code, all the code that the professor provided, and I completely made it my own. And then if you do that, you can call that your own personal project as well. So there's many ways that you can do this. I also created some personal projects while I was learning new skills and languages, like I mentioned before. So a lot of times if you take a course on, let's say, LinkedIn Learning, there will be a project kind of built into the course. So as you're taking the course, you're also doing this project, and that's a great way to add projects to your resume as well. And if you are unsure of where to start, you can also just look up online some basic projects for beginners, and I'm sure there's a plethora of things online. So I also want to point out that if you do decide to create any personal projects, it's super important to add them to GitHub. This is a great way to one, learn GitHub, but also to two, show them off. So a lot of company applications will have a place where you can add your GitHub link. And I think that is really great because even if they don't look at it, it shows that you're familiar with GitHub and that you actually have projects that you're willing to showcase. The next thing that I will talk about is joining clubs. So when I was at Cornell, I made it a huge priority to join clubs at the beginning of my freshman year. This was honestly more so because I was kind of lonely because I was attending Cornell remotely. I had really no friends other than my roommate, who turned out not being my roommate because we were remote. So I wound up joining Women in Computing, and soon after I applied to their photo and film committee and was accepted. I also joined Cornell Equity Research, which was focused on creating some type of financial publication every semester. And then I also joined COVID-19 Peer Consultants, which kind of helped to solve COVID-19 problems on campus. And this is when I was still interested in global and public health. Obviously, you can tell from all of these clubs that my interests were very varied. I mean, one was computer science, one was finance, and then one was public health. So it definitely doesn't need to be only computer science clubs. You should just join what you're interested in, because I find that if you join something that you're interested in or passionate about, you'll actually have meaningful things to talk about in interviews. So for example, sometimes I would be asked about a leadership example, or maybe an example of working in a team. And I was able to talk about, for example, COVID-19 Peer Consultants, which had nothing to do with computer science, but I was showing that leadership, I was showing that teamwork, and it still obviously worked in my interviews. It made a good impression. So I think it's really important to just join new clubs, and it's a great way to make friends. I made friends that I'm still friends with today, even after I transferred colleges. So I definitely recommend joining clubs, getting to know people, and getting those experiences to put on your resume. The next thing that I'll talk about is framing your resume correctly. So I think this is super important, especially when you're early on in your career and you don't have that many things to showcase on your resume. So it's really important that you frame it correctly. So starting off with education, I think it's really important to put that you are a computer science major or intended major as computer science. The reason being is that many resumes will get auto-rejected if they don't have computer science on their resume and they don't have any prior CS or tech work experience. So for me at Cornell, I was still a global and public health sciences major because there's a lot of prerequisites in order to declare a CS major at Cornell. However, I put that my intended major is computer science, and I think that really helped because it shows that my interests lie in computer science. And I think a lot of recruiters and companies know that some colleges don't even allow you to officially declare your major until maybe your sophomore year. So in this sense, you're not lying. You're not saying that your major is computer science, you're just saying it's intended. So I think this is really important, especially if your major is not computer science. I would also say it's important to add any relevant coursework you have related to computer science or even mathematics. Like I believe I put both of my intro level CS classes. I also put down like probability, I think like linear algebra. And I think that, when you're a freshman, this is still okay to do. And it shows that you actually have taken classes in computer science. I also think that it's still okay to include your high school on your resume as a freshman. I wouldn't do this if you're a sophomore or above, but when you're a freshman, like you might not even have a GPA at this point, so it's completely fine to include your high school on your resume. And then in terms of experience, I think that if you don't have any CS or tech experience, then I think that you should actually put your personal projects above your work experience. And the reason being is because like recruiters skim your resume from top to bottom, and the first thing you want them to see is demonstrating your technical skills. So for me, I put my 3 projects at the top of my resume, followed by the rest of my work experience, which included being a perioperative care technician at Northwestern Medicine, and then also working as a swim instructor during high school. And that's also to say that it's okay to have things that are not tech related on your resume. It shows your varying interests and it shows that you have work experience and you've worked in the past. And then moving on to leadership, I included being an associate for Cornell Equity Research because I think that showed leadership in like publishing different financial publications. And then I also included being class council president from high school and being a HOSA board member from high school. And I think as a freshman, it's still okay to do this because you are so early on in your college career. Once again, if you're a sophomore or above, I wouldn't recommend including anything from your high school. And then moving on to additional information, I included other activities that I was less involved in at Cornell, like Women in Computing and COVID-19 peer consultants. I also included certifications like CNA, CPR certified. That probably won't apply to most people, but I think it's still cool because it shows, once again, varying interests and also that you have like demonstrated that you've worked hard in some area. And then I put down awards related to HOSA, which is Health Occupation Students of America. So once again, this is demonstrating a lot of my past healthcare experience. And then for skills, I put down like Python, Java, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Git, GitHub, like literally anything that you have tech related is awesome. I even put Microsoft Excel, even though I'm not really that proficient. But I feel like as a freshman, you just have to really take advantage of all the skills that you can think of, because I think skills will come with time. You'll take varying classes that will have more languages that you'll learn. You'll learn stuff on the job or in clubs. So it'll come with time, but make sure that you include any, especially coding languages if you know them. And then I also kept a section about interests. I put down stock market, distance running, swimming, and cooking. This is not necessary, but I think I was just trying to fill in extra space that I had at the bottom of my resume. The next thing that I'll be talking about is job applications. As a freshman, I applied to over 100 places, probably closer to 200 places, and I was using practically every job application site on the planet, like LinkedIn, Handshake, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and more. I was also applying to a variety of companies, not just FANG and big tech. I was applying to finance, small companies, no-name companies, everything that I could possibly find. And this is just because as a freshman or someone without past experience, you really can't be picky in the companies that you choose. And the same thing goes for the roles that you're choosing. I didn't just limit myself to software engineering. I applied to every role that had anything remotely to do with tech. So that includes data science, IT, site reliability, DevOps. Really, there are so many other roles out there outside of software engineering that you can apply to. And I think it's really important to just apply to as many places as possible because a huge part of the application process is luck. And so some companies will move you on to the next round, others won't. And you just want to increase the likelihood that at least one company will move you on to the next round by applying to as many as possible. The first place that I heard back from was Northwestern Medicine for their IT internship. And I think a big reason why I heard back was because I'd previously worked at Northwestern Medicine as a perioperative care technician. And for those of you who don't know, it's very similar to a CNA or certified nursing assistant. So, although I had previously worked in healthcare, just the fact that I'd worked at the company in the past, I think helped in my application. And so the process was essentially after I passed the resume round, I was moved on to a phone screen where I was talking to a recruiter and talking to them about my interests, my past experience, and next steps. And then after that, I was scheduled an interview with a manager from information services. And in that interview, I was asked a lot of questions about my past experience, specific examples of leadership and teamwork. For example, I specifically remember being asked about my experience as a COVID-19 peer consultant. And while this has nothing to do with tech, it still showed my leadership and teamwork skills, which I think is really important. So that just goes to show that you can absolutely talk about things outside of tech in a tech interview. And so this interview went really well, and I was eventually given a offer. Unfortunately, I was not able to accept the offer because it required driving around to different hospitals, and I didn't have a car at the time, so I unfortunately had to decline this offer. However, I think it was still a really great learning experience. It gave me practice interviewing, it gave me an idea of what type of questions they ask, and I'm still really thankful for that opportunity. The next place that I heard back from was called Reworld Inc, and it's a startup gaming company based out of Seattle. After I passed the resume round, I was moved on to a video interview with an operations engineer. This was pretty casual, just asking me about my past experience, what I'm looking for, and what kind of time commitment I would be able to give. After I passed this round, I was moved on to the final round with their chief product officer. I don't think it's normal to be interviewed by like a CPO or a CTO, but because it was a smaller startup, that's why I was interviewed by someone who was so high up. But this interview was actually very unique. They asked me about my past experience and my personal projects, and they actually asked me to walk me through one of my projects that I had on my GitHub. And at this point, I was so thankful that I had uploaded my projects to GitHub and also that I left meaningful comments in my code because it had been a while since I had looked at that project. So it was really nice to have those comments for a refresher so that I was able to walk through my code very smoothly. And then after that, I wound up receiving the offer and I was super excited. I feel like it felt like kind of my first real internship offer since the Northwestern Medicine I kind of got because I'd already worked there. So this was a part-time internship that was remote and it started right away. So I was able to work full-time at Cornell as a student and also work part-time at Reworld Inc. as a software engineer intern. And I am to this day super grateful for this opportunity because it really jump-started the rest of the opportunities that followed. So given that, the next place I heard back from was called Train Technologies, and it was for their analytics and data science internship. After I finished the resume round, I was moved on to a higher view interview. And so for those of you who haven't taken higher view, it's usually where you log on, you get a question, and then you have like a minute to prepare, and then maybe like a minute to respond on video. So for a lot of people, I know they don't like it because they don't like staring at themselves in the camera. You can turn the camera off if that bothers you. But this is mostly behavioral, just asking about your past experiences. I've taken a lot of higher view interviews, and only a couple of them have been technical. But anyways, I moved on to a phone interview with the recruiter, kind of touching base with my interests and what I'm looking for and letting me know what the next steps are. And then after that, I had a final round interview with their VP in Connected Energy Solutions. So this was an interview that was still behavioral, but had a lot of technical aspects, asking about my past experiences, the technologies I'm used to using. I actually remember getting asked about my leadership, and I talked about COVID-19 peer consultants. And even though that isn't related to tech or computer science, I think it was still a great way to show my leadership and teamwork skills. So this is just to show that you don't always have to talk about technical things, especially if you don't have that much on your resume. I wound up receiving the offer for that. I was super elated. It was for the summer, and I was so close to accepting the offer, but I talked to some people and I was suggested to wait just to see if anywhere else got back to me. And somehow, like, as I was waiting to hear back from people, a recruiter from Fidelity Investments reached out. I had passed the resume round, and I had done the higher view interview a while back. And then they were looking to schedule a phone interview. So I did that. And once again, asking about my interests, what I'd like from the internship, and talking about next steps. After I heard about that and scheduled my final round interview with Fidelity, I actually asked for a extension on my internship offer deadline for Train Technologies. And I'm so glad that I waited. And I'm so glad that I also asked for that extension, because I was able to complete that final round interview with Fidelity. So in this interview, I was interviewed by a senior engineer, an engineering manager, and a product manager. And so obviously this was pretty intimidating because these are all like three very established professionals, but I think they did a great job at making sure that I felt comfortable in the interview. I was asked about my past projects. I talked about one of my JavaScript projects because they had expressed that they use JavaScript on their team. So yeah, I felt like the interview went really well, and then I wound up receiving an offer, and I wound up accepting that offer. So it was honestly a pretty surreal time for me. I never would have imagined that I would have gotten this many offers with only like a few months of coding experience. But this just goes to show that if you work hard and put yourself out there, anything is possible. As you can see, I had a 100% success rate in getting the offer after doing the interview, and this is definitely not the norm, so don't hold yourself to these standards. I think a big portion of it was luck, and then I think another portion of it was the fact that I was very eager and ready to learn. I didn't try to hide the fact that I had only been coding for a few months. I actually used it to highlight the fact that I am a fast learner and that I'm very willing and ready to learn. So for example, I would phrase it kind of like, although I've only been coding for a few months, I've done all of these personal projects and learned all of these coding languages, and I'd be more than willing to do that if you were to hire me as your intern. So I obviously didn't say it exactly like that, but I really wanted to highlight the fact that I was a fast learner and I was very willing and ready to learn on the job. And I think that's super important because I think a lot of interviewers look for candidates who are excited to work there and excited to be there. So I would definitely say that is a great tip for you if you are looking for an internship. Some things that I would have done differently: I definitely would have studied more coding challenges and technical interviews. Although I didn't have a lot of technical interviews, I think that a lot of companies look for ability to solve coding challenges. So ways that you can prepare for this are, doing LeetCode, CodeChef, CodeSignal. There are tons of resources out there to practice your coding challenge skills. Another thing I would do is have practice more behavioral interviews and interview questions. So have some ideas lined up for if an interviewer asks you for an example of when you were showing leadership, or when you solved a problem, or when you were working on a team. Those are all very commonly asked questions, so having some ideas in mind as to how you would answer those questions can be really useful. If you are a freshman or someone who hasn't had an internship in the past and you are searching for internships, I wish you the best of luck. I hope that this video helped. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!